You said yes, not because you wanted to, but because the thought of saying no felt like swallowing glass. Maybe it was a favor someone asked at the wrong time. Maybe it was staying late when you were already running on nothing. Maybe it was answering a message you'd been avoiding, just to stop the feeling in your chest that had been sitting there since you saw their name. You said yes, and the moment you did, some part of you exhaled. Not from relief, but from the temporary absence of guilt. Because for you, guilt isn't something that comes and goes. It lives here, quietly, like a background hum you stopped noticing years ago. It's just the weather inside you. You know what it looks like from the outside. You seem fine, capable, maybe even easygoing. You don't make scenes, you don't ask for too much, you keep things moving. But inside, there's a running list, and it never clears. You canceled plans 3 weeks ago and you still think about it. Not obsessively, but it's there, tucked in a corner, waiting. You sent a message, and then reread it 4 times wondering if it came across wrong. You forgot someone's birthday and spent the next 2 days performing extra kindness to make up for it, not because they asked you to, but because your guilt demanded payment. You apologize when someone bumps into you. You thank people excessively, almost desperately. You fill silences with reassurances. Sorry, am I talking too much? Not because you think you are, but because the possibility that you might be is enough to set the feeling off. You feel guilty for being tired. Guilty for needing something. Guilty for having a bad day when someone else has it worse. Guilty for not calling. Guilty for calling too much. Guilty for the mood you couldn't control. Guilty for the mood you could but didn't. And sometimes, the one that really gets you, guilty for not feeling guilty about the right things. Like some moral audit is always running in the background, grading you. You are never fully at rest. There is always something you should have done better. What you're experiencing has a name. Researchers call it chronic guilt proneness. And it is distinct from normal guilt in one critical way. Normal guilt is a response to something specific. You did a thing, you feel bad, you repair it, it passes. Chronic guilt proneness doesn't work that way. It isn't attached to an event. It's attached to your sense of self. Dr. Price Tangney, a psychologist who has studied guilt and shame for over 30 years, draws a key distinction here. Guilt says, I did something bad. Shame says, I am bad. And chronic guilt proneness, the kind you're carrying, often sits right on that border. The original trigger might be a behavior, but the feeling that follows is about identity. And here's where it becomes important to understand what's happening in your nervous system. When you anticipate that you might have disappointed someone, not even that you have, just that you might have, your brain registers it as a threat. The amygdala fires. The same system that's designed to detect physical danger activates around social disapproval. For most people, that activation is brief. The brain checks for real danger, finds none, and settles. But for women who experience chronic guilt, the threat detection system stays on longer. Research in interpersonal neurobiology suggests that for people with this pattern, the brain has learned to treat social disconnection as genuinely dangerous. So the guilt isn't irrational. It's your nervous system doing exactly what it was trained to do. Keep you connected, keep you safe, keep everyone satisfied. It just never learned to switch off. There's also a second mechanism at play. Psychologists call it responsibility over attribution. You have a deeply wired tendency to locate the cause of other people's distress inside yourself. Someone is upset, and before any evidence exists that you caused it, you've already begun calculating how you might have. This is not a character flaw. It is a learned cognitive pattern, and patterns can be understood. At some point when you were young, you learned that keeping other people comfortable was your job. Maybe it wasn't said out loud. It rarely is. But it was communicated, in the way tension in the room shifted toward you to fix. In the way your needs were dismissed as too much or too sensitive. In the way love felt slightly more available when you were agreeable, helpful, quiet. You were a child. You needed connection like you needed oxygen. And your brain, brilliant and adaptive, figured out the formula. Minimize yourself, anticipate others, take up less space, and you stay safe. Guilt was the enforcement mechanism. The moment you had a need that might inconvenience someone, guilt arrived first, before the need could even fully form to redirect you. Over time, you stopped noticing the guilt as a separate thing. It just became the way you moved through the world. Slightly smaller than your actual size, slightly more available than you actually are. And no one taught you that you were allowed to outgrow that. Here's the thing about that guilt. It worked. In the environment where it was born, it kept you connected. It kept you safe. It helped you read rooms and people and dynamics with a precision that most people can't match. That is real skill. That is real intelligence. The problem isn't that you developed it. The problem is that you've been living in a different environment for years, and the system didn't get the update. You don't need to perform constant goodness to be loved anymore. You don't need to earn your place in relationships through perpetual self-monitoring. The people worth staying close to are not keeping score. Becoming aware of the pattern is the first step, not to shame yourself for having it, but to create a pause between the feeling and the behavior. To notice the guilt arriving and ask, gently, is this mine? Did I actually do something that needs repairing? Or is this just the old system doing what it always does? Not every guilty feeling is a debt. Some of them are just echoes. I want to ask you something, and I want you to really think about it before you scroll away. What is the earliest memory you have of feeling like you had done something wrong, not because someone said so, but because you just knew you were supposed to feel that way? Leave it in the comments. You might be surprised how many women share the exact same moment. If this video stayed with you, our next video goes even deeper into the psychology of women who never ask for help. Why asking feels more dangerous than struggling alone, and where that learned silence comes from. Watch it next.